our seats. We're going to start our capital town meeting. Are we ready? Okay, I'm going to call to order our town meeting for capital. Would everybody join me in a pledge of allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For this meeting, we need to have a moderator. Do I have any nominations for moderator? Yes, Mr. Jaffe. Who do you nominate? I'm sorry? He nominated Matt Grimes. So I have a second for Matt Grimes. I see a second for Matt Grimes. All those in, any other nominations? All those in favor of Matt Grimes being a nominate, our moderator, say aye. Aye, that carries. Matt, it's your meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Turn up the mic, Matt.
Am I on now? It's on. Thank you, Mr. Dunn. First order of business is we have the call of the town meeting, and it's fairly lengthy, so I would entertain a motion to waive the reading of the call of the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Belden. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Jaffe. Any discussion on waiving the call of the meeting? All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'd like to thank our two assistant town clerks who are pinch hitting tonight for our town clerk. This is their first town meeting, so thank you, Colleen and Donna. There is also a very lengthy resolution that pertains to this town meeting that if we don't waive it, we can have it all read. But would there be a motion to waive the reading of the resolution? Thank you, Mrs. McElvain. Is there a second? Mr. Belden, any discussion on waiving the reading of the actual resolution?
Why would you waive it?
We don't have to waive it. You can read the entire resolution if you like, but it's fairly lengthy, just to be the essence of time. But it's not, it's whatever the House wants to do, we can do. I'm sorry? There is, all those in favor of waiving the reading of the resolution signify by saying aye and raising your hands.
Aye.
Thank you. Is there anybody opposed? Passes with one vote in opposition. Okay. In order to, so the purpose of tonight's meeting is to set a date for a referendum on the bond resolution, and the Board of Selectmen has recommended the date of Tuesday, May 21st, between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m., which probably coincides with the recommended date for the annual budget referendum for the town and school. So we've had a motion to waive the reading of the resolution, so we're going to actually have a motion to put the date of May 21st on the floor. Is there somebody want to put that motion on the floor? Mr. Belvin, seconded by Mrs. McElvain. So the motion is on the floor, so now we will have a presentation on the resolution. So the first selectman, please.
Thank you, Matt. We're going to have a quick presentation on the capital projects. Just as an overview, the town has, over the last 8 years, made a concerted effort to be more deliberate about how we fund capital projects, more deliberate on choosing which capital projects to actually fund. And in doing that, what we did is we formed a capital planning committee, which is members of the Board of Finance and others that look at all the capital projects that are put before the town, and there are literally dozens of them, and makes recommendations to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance as to which capital projects should be put forward this year. They also help us, and we're going to keep them running, and they will look at, we created 6 years ago, a 10-year capital plan so that we know what's coming up, how we're going to fund it, and what we're going to do with all the capital plans and not miss anything. They've been doing a great job. This year they didn't have as much time as they normally would, but we're going to try to formally incorporate the Capital Planning Commission because they really do a great job and they help the entire town. Over the past 8 years, we have been trying and been successful in trying to pay for more capital items with cash and less with borrowing. Our overall goal would be in the future to pay for almost every single thing with cash. Now that takes time. For example, when I started in office 7 years ago, we were paying about $350,000 in cash for our road paving out of a total cost of $1.5 million. We are now paying 100% in cash every year for road paving. That lowers the amount of debt that the town has to take on, and it's a good thing overall, especially when we have big projects we need to do. Can we change the slide? Can we move to the next slide, please?
There's a
Oh,
clicker.
I can do it. I don't know how to do it. Just bear with me. Here we go, got it. Oops. Okay. Why are we here? Section C94 of the town charter says any resolution over $1 million has to be authorized at a referendum, which we will have on May 21st. And then we have to set a date for that referendum, which is the purpose of tonight's meeting. This meeting has to be at least 45 days before the actual referendum date and no more than 90 days before. And that will give residents that much time to look at the resolution, to look at the projects, and make a decision as to whether they want to vote yes or no on that referendum. The resolution is to fund in the 2024-25 capital projects in the amount of $3,335,613. Included in that is new bonds totaling $2,358,900 and using 2023-24 excess revenues of $976,713. In addition, the operating budget includes capital projects in the amount of $2,960,178 for spending paid in cash. These are voted on as part of the total town operating budget. In the fall, all of our departments get together. They come to me, and we have meetings with every single department as to what both their operating needs, which the Board of Finance will discuss later on in their meeting, and their capital needs. We go over everything that they need in detail. I, the Director of Finance, sit down with them and go through that. It's an exhaustive review, so we understand what it is they need, why they need it, why would they need specific equipment or specific projects versus others, and then we take all those projects and we send them to the Capital Committee. The Capital Committee interviews each of the departments, talks to them about their projects, and then the Capital Committee, and this is something that has really helped us, the Capital Committee prioritizes all of these projects over all of the departments. So they prioritize them for the entire town. Prior to having the Capital Committee, it was up to the first selectman to prioritize, and then the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance got to do that also. Having the Capital Committee do that brings a higher level, looking at the forest kind of view, because they're looking at not only this year, but future years' needs for capital projects. And then it goes through the normal process of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. And the projects that we have in this resolution, we have to next year do a plan of conservation and development. It is required by the state to do it every 10 years. It has a lot of new requirements, including addressing climate control and some other subjects. It is an exhaustive study. Yesterday I got a letter from the Planning Commission that was 4 pages long with about 60 bullet items of things they would like me to deliver so they can do the plan of conservation and development. It's an extremely complex project to do, and it has to be done well. So we have put a consultant in to help the Planning Commission do that. If everybody remembers, in our last election, we voted to merge the Planning and Zoning Commissions. That will be done next year in 2025. And so we put in money to help them plan that and merge the 2 commissions. The roof needs to be replaced on the historical building. That's the building that's directly across from the Parks and Rec building in the town center down here. That roof really needs to be done. We do have some bonding costs that we're going to roll in of $74,000. And the tax collector and assessor, we want to redo the counters. The doors are falling off, the laminate is falling off. These counters were put in when the building was built in 1980, I believe it was, and it's about time. 40 years is a good long time. 42 years is a long time to use a counter. Public safety, obviously, always number one in one of our requirements and addressing items. We're going to ask for $102,000 to replace handguns. Obviously, we need police vehicles every year to replace. These are patrol vehicles we're replacing. The volunteer fire department needs 5 cold water rescue suits and 3 thermal imaging cameras. In public works, we have a causeway on Candlewood Lake Road that needs engineering, and in the future is going to need to be repaired. The engineering will cost $15,000. We are going to replace 44 BK vehicle. We use one of our bigger trucks in paving and doing maintenance in town. We're going to replace 83 BK, which is a Ford F-350 truck, a chipper, and then for insurance and security reasons, we're going to be putting GPS trackers on our vehicles. That helps us with our insurance and lets us know where every single one of our vehicles are. And we're also going to ask for the 40 BK facility manager's vehicle to be replaced. And then, as is normal, we need to do elevator maintenance. We haven't done it in years, the 43-year-old elevators, and that's $25,000. For Parks and Rec, these are a replacement greens groomer for our turf fields is $8,000. We're doing repairs on the Parks and Rec building that is on the school site on the lower driveway. That's where we keep a lot of our vehicles. We're going to replace 2 of the floors in there. The roof on the building in Town Beach needs repairs. Kids Kingdom has to be resurfaced. That's a safety issue for our children. The Town Beach, we're still having a problem with drainage and erosion, and we're going to address that. We have to replace the sand that got eroded from the weather. And then we have a project over time, we're going to replace all the bleachers in town. It's a long-term project. It's going to take a few years to do. And for Cadigan, we're redoing the tennis, basketball, beach, and baseball fields. And the Still River Greenway extension is an engineering design. And now, here comes for our schools. I think a lot of people would agree that for many, many years, we did not provide the level of support to maintain our schools at a level they need to be maintained at so we can use them for many, many years. These schools had hired a consultant who came in, looked at all our buildings, particularly this high school and Wisconsin, and did an in-depth, exhaustive review of the buildings and came up with a 10-year plan on what needs to be done to keep these buildings in good condition. We followed that, and the Capital Committee followed those recommendations, and these are the items that they're recommending we do. Replace the roof over the library, tie in the rooftop units to the building management system, the air conditioning and HVAC systems up there, remove and replace the 10,000-gallon underwater storage tank, which is under the parking lot. That's a risk issue for us if that tank starts leaking. And then maintain and upgrade 3 restrooms per year, so that over 10 years, we will have replaced and updated every single bathroom. In the middle school, they're suggesting and saying we should replace the sections A, C, D, E, and F, the roof, replace an inoperable boiler, one of the 2, and ceiling tiles to replace when we do the roof sections because we have leaks. So we don't want to do that until the leaks are fixed. Are there any questions or comments? Would anybody like to speak? I leave that up to you.
So now the presentation's concluded. Anybody from the...
Yeah, well, actually, yes,
So anybody who We have the Board of Selectmen, we have the Board of Finance, we have members of the public here. If anybody would like to ask a question, just raise your hand and give your name and address, and then we will get your question asked to the right person. Ms. Carter, do you have a question?
Yeah, this is probably for the superintendent, but the
Just name and
Wiskaneer,
address for the record.
Tara Carr, 54 Indian Trail,
Thank you.
the Wiskaneer Middle School bathrooms. There are children who don't go all day long because the bathrooms are so disgusting. When is that going to be addressed?
Superintendent?
Tara, that's the first I'm hearing of a report like that. I don't know that Mr. Renda's had that report, so we will look into that tomorrow.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to ask a question about any of the items that Mr. Dunn covered in his presentation, or any comments on any of those items? Mr. Petroscioni? Just name and address for the record, please.
Gregory Petroscioni, 8 Willenona Drive, Brookfield. Question, I don't know if you can bring the slide back,
We
if
can.
that's possible.
Steve?
There are a couple of questions, actually.
Which slide, Greg?
Starting with your cost of items, going to the safety slide, I guess. We'll start there.
Which one? The safety slides? There you go.
Public safety needs, is that what you have a question?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
So, there are a number of costs on there. I believe in one of the notices, or stated right there, it says replacement of handguns. That seems rather high for the size department we have. And if we're replacing, what's being done with the ones that are being taken out of service? Does the town get told what's going on with that?
Yes. The police have found that the handguns that they're using now have been found to fire without using the trigger. There have been instances where these guns have gone off, and not here in Brookfield, but there have been instances where these guns have gone off, and a determination has been made that we do not want our officers using guns that are not safe or might cause harm. So we're replacing every single one of those guns, and that's why it's $102,000. I'm sorry, your second question was?
I was just curious.
Oh,
is
usually
there,
we'll trade in the guns that we have.
okay. Is there an approximate number of these guns that we're taking out of service or that we're purchasing with that?
Well, we have
that fund?
37 officers, so
Yeah.
I would think it's 37 guns. In that range, we might have a couple spares.
Okay. All right. Vehicles replacement. Is the town getting notified as to some justification as to which vehicles? You said one, 2, and 3 are paid. 1 and 2 are paid in cash. Number 3 is
Yes.
on.
Yes, every year we replace either 2 patrol vehicles or 3 patrol vehicles. As you know, and I'm sure you agree,
Yeah.
patrol vehicles have to be on the road 24 hours a day, completely reliable. Once we replace those, they then go to detectives and sergeants and management. And once the police department is finished with those cars, they then come over to the town. We have
Yes.
a number of them.
So effectively, which vehicles are the ones that are actually being taken out of service and because of why?
Those are vehicles that are probably in the 10 to 12-year-old range, so they will come from.
But the
like-
town will be told, the members of the town will be told specifically that?
Sure, we can tell you. I don't have those.
Yeah.
I can tell you, but if you contact my office, we'll tell you
Yep.
exactly which ones we're going to replace. We have a whole schedule.
Sounds good. And the next slide, if you wouldn't mind?
Forward. The little arrow is teeny, I see. There we go. Is that the one you want to look at?
Greg, this one? Greg? Greg?
Yes, sir. Yes, thank you. Sorry, I had a sidebar. I apologize on that. And basically the same question referring as the patrol vehicles. the replacement of these said vehicles, town will be notified, you know, why, you know, what justification there is, why they need them?
Yeah, typically the vehicles we are replacing are between 10 and 20 years old.
Yep.
They have, and even if a vehicle's 10 years old, if it's in reasonable condition, we'll continue to use it. But if we get a frame that's rotted out, we get a motor that is going, then we will replace them.
Understandable.
Again, I can give you a list of every vehicle we're going to.
Just for transparency, it'd be great, you know, the town were notified of, you know, why we're doing these things, and, you know, spending the money on these things. I just think that would be great.
Yeah, and anybody who wants more detail, we'll give it.
Yeah, and I mean, just a line item as a chipper, is that a replacement or is that an additional?
It's an additional chipper. The one we have now is in the condition that it is dangerous. It often kicks branches back out, so they have to be very careful how they feed it. So this will be, we're going to keep the existing chipper for probably one more year until we can get this one in and working, and then we will sell
Saves
it.
time with.
And we usually auction them off at govs.com,
Yep.
I think.
Okay. All right, and then the next slide, if you wouldn't mind.
Let's see it right there.
Now, unfortunately, I haven't been keeping up on the history of some of the buildings in town. I do know that there's been problems with roofs in a number of the town buildings for a while. Some of these buildings seem to be fairly new, to be such as the beach building to need a new roof already. I believe that's shingled, asphalt shingle, and they're sure there's a certain period of guarantee on that shingle. Is this something that's going to be taken care of through that warranty on that item, or?
Well, we redid the town beach about 9 years ago,
Yep.
but we did keep on the east side of Kenwood Lake Road, we did keep that bathroom building,
Yep.
and I believe that's the building we're replacing the roof on, and that building is about 30 or 40 years old.
Okay. An original.
But and I believe it has the original roof.
Okay. So that's normal.
Yeah.
Then. Okay. And I believe that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Steve. Anybody else have any further questions or comments with respect to the capital budget?
I have another question.
The gentleman, Mr. Malolo?
Going back to the handguns.
Just give your name and address for the record, Dan.
Dan Malillo, 90 Long Meadow Hill. I just did a quick dividing, 102,000 for the guns, 37 cops, it's $2,700 a gun. Seems a little steep.
We'll get the answer. Mr. Dunn?
Yeah, the purchase of guns also includes training for every officer on the new gun, which they're required to have. Every gun is a little bit different. We want our officers to be safe and comfortable with the handguns they're using, so that includes training also. Guns are very expensive now.
No, I realize that, but I thought that we'd have professionals who would be able to train the other officers. I didn't think we'd need outside care to train professional people with guns. That you would think with purchasing that many guns, that they might throw that in. You know, if you're going to get 37 guns, they might come over and at least train one person so they could train everybody else rather than just
Yeah,
seems
I
really
believe, and I'm going to try to give you an answer, and if you come to my office or send me an email or call my office, I'll get you more detail, that we must have certified people who know these guns, and you must have certified trainers. You just can't have one of your guys train another guy in handguns. So that's why they all have to get certified. But I can get more detail on that if you'd like.
All right, yeah, that would be nice.
Okay. Do you have another question, Dan, or is that it?
Well, is everything, like, for argument's sake, I hear around town, about, or about the library, that they're looking for money, and I don't understand why in a society where books are being transferred to, downloads, why we need a more expanded library. So that's not included in any.
We're not sure, hold on a second. Is there any library money in this?
There is in the cash side, we are putting money into the planning for the community center. It was originally under the library. We're looking to do something with Center School. We have a $6 million asset that I think we're going to try to see if the town wants to take that and make it into a community center, which would include library, some parks and rec, perhaps historical society could get a room in there. So, you know, a real community
Right.
center.
Yeah, because I was wondering why we would be expanding a library when the use of libraries is shrinking, because of technology.
That's debatable. You know, if you go to libraries, newer libraries in like Ridgefield, West Hartford, Darien, their library attendance is up significantly since they built new libraries. Because libraries do different things than just give out books now.
I know, I've tried to download books from our library, and there's months and months of wait. And,
So they have to pay for every single one of those subscriptions, and for popular books, we only get so many copies of each ebook, and that's why you have to wait.
I
We can give
understand.
them a lot more money, they could buy a lot more subscriptions, and you get it sooner.
Well, that would be great, but why would expanding the area help us in that determination?
Yeah, it's a balancing act on how much they can spend on that.
Thank you.
Mrs. Carter, do you have a question?
I did. Just a final question from me regarding how the capital committee deliberated. I've been through the process twice, so I understand it's tough because there's a lot of asks in here, but one of the things that we should really focus on, and I'm wondering how we're going to get at it because it's not included, is Cadigan Park with the lighting and the back parking lot that's gravel. Very, very dangerous situation. That should have been paved years ago, and the lighting should be replaced now. Additionally, the baseball field situation, which is a major problem. There was $40,000 worth of stitching on the list to create, I believe, a 90 that we're lacking because once you turn 13, you have nowhere to play baseball in the town of Brookfield. So we're doing our children a major disservice there. So how are we going to get after baseball and making Cadigan safe?
Is the question for the capital committee? Who's the question for? I'm sorry. Ms. Selectman?
Your first question was on Cadigan, and the capital committee looked at those things, replacing, we have had in the capital budget for many years, we have a walking path around Cadigan. And we have tried to pave that a number of times because moms with their carriages, it's hard to do, you know, their prams. It's hard to walk around.
I'm not talking about the walking trail. I'm talking about the parking lot, which
Yeah,
is
I
very,
would
very
dis-
dangerous.
Yeah, I would disagree that the parking lot is unsafe because it's not paved. There are priorities in the capital committee, and I think the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance agreed that there were higher priorities. If I had my brothers, I'd agree with you. We'd have the whole thing paved. But there were higher priorities on the part of all of the committees. So you had three committees, the capital committee, the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Finance, who all agreed, well, mostly agreed, that that wasn't as high a priority. With baseball fields, we have, I believe it's $829,000 in the new school budget to redo baseball fields at Wiskineer Field, at Wiskineer. The driver on that is we could not build those fields until we took the portables down at Wiskineer because the plan right now is to put and I agree, 100%, we need another 90-foot field. We absolutely do. So we can't put that 90-foot field in until we take the portables down. We couldn't take the portables down because there was a delay in building the new school and they had to keep the students at Wiskineer. That is not the case now, and I have asked the Municipal Building Committee as a matter of urgency to begin that project, to take those portables down, hire a designer, and build those baseball fields, because I agree with you. We absolutely need another 90-foot field. We only have one at the high school right now, and that, if it rains, can get rained out for 3 or 4 days. Kids can't play because it's so soggy. We've had that issue too on a capital committee basis, is to redo those fields, put in new drainage at the high school, because it is a problem. You know, we have competing interests here and competing things, and it's really hard to get everything. You just can't do everything at once. And so you have to prioritize. But I agree with you, getting that 90-foot field and the other 60 in at the Wisconsin School is a priority and should be done as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Steve. Any further questions? I'm sorry. Mrs. Arment, that is?
Yes, thank you. Gwen Arment, 62 Indian Trail. I'm just curious, do you do price comparisons on these projects?
Is that directed for Selectman or Director of Finance? Who's that directed to?
Whoever couldn't answer that.
We'll just repeat the question one more time. I'm sorry.
Does the town do price comparisons in all these capital projects?
The town, for every single purchase over $20,000, goes through a formal RFP process where we post the RFP both on the town website and the state website. We invite possible contractors to submit RFPs to us, and then we go through those for everyone over $20,000 and determine which contractor provides the best price versus service and quality. Below $20,000, we have to get 3 quotes, or I believe it's 3 quotes, between $5,000 and $10,000. I always ask people to get quotes for everything. You know, even if it's only a $1,000 item, did you check somewhere else? Is this the best price? Is this the best quality? And so that's what we do. It's a matter of town policy, and we do look at this and vet these things very, very carefully. In some cases, you know, there aren't a lot of providers that do things, and so sometimes we're a little bit constrained there, but for most, we have an incredible array of contractors who do want to work with the town and are interested in working with us. Just want to give you a little more information. Director of Finance came to me. On the guns, the quotation for the guns was $50,146. They have to practice with these guns, so the ammunition to do that transition is $7,000. The overtime, one of the big items is overtime for our officers to get trained. We have to pay them while they're trained. That's $38,000, and the range time is about $5,700. So that's what brings it up to $102,000.
Thank you. Mr. Petroscioni, you have another question?
Yes.
Just repeat your name for the record.
Greg Petroscioni, 8 Willamette Drive. Regarding that overtime cost and training cost, why isn't that incorporated into their annual qualifications for their sidearm?
Yeah. The reason is the kickoff is the purchase of the guns. So we've included that in the capital project because it's separate from, it's not a normal everyday. We would not buy guns every year and train officers every year on the use of those guns. It's a one-time thing. Operating budgets hold things that we're going to do every single year. Does that make sense?
Correct, but they are required to qualify annually as it stands right now.
Right, with
So
the weapons that they
why
have. Right.
Why wouldn't this changeover be incorporated in that qualification process? As opposed to spending...
It's a higher level of training. When we're going in and doing our qualifications, the officers are using their existing weapons and they're training to show that they have the expertise to use those weapons. This is entirely different. This is training them to use a new weapon, not just shooting the gun, which is what they do in their annual qualification. Does that make sense?
Which technically is part of that, but okay, thank you.
A little
Any
bit
additional
more,
question?
I'm sorry.
One at a time, please. Any additional questions or comments?
Yes, I'd like to comment on Ms. Arment's question. And just for edification with the capital committee, they do provide estimates through the process. So that comes even before what Steve said about any kind of RFP. So it's very thorough and there are estimates provided early in the process.
Additional questions or comments on the proposed capital budget? Anybody else? Any additional questions? Okay, I don't see any more hands, so there's a resolution on the floor. It was made by Bob Belden, seconded by, I believe it was Betsy McIlvaine, to set the capital referendum for Tuesday, May 21st, between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. at our regular polling places. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye. Is there anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this special town meeting. Thank you. Who made the motion?
I'll make it.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Is there a second? Mr. Jaffe, thank you very much. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
How are you doing? Yep.
That's what the next thing is. There's actually parts to the community.
Oh, so it is still tonight?
Yes. So the way the Board of Finance operates is they have public hearings on the budget, so they're going to do a presentation on the whole budget in about 5 minutes. And then the annual town meeting on May 7th. That will be posted. And they'll present it as well. This isn't the annual town meeting, it's a public hearing. But it's good. Okay.
Appreciate it.
Tell me when. All right, I'd like to call to order the public hearing, April 3rd. We'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to thank you all for coming. We're going to roll right into Dan presenting our presentation. So, Dan, please.
Just turn it up on the side. Yep.
There we go. Better?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks to, I would say all of you, but thanks to 7 of you for being here and hopefully more watching at home. Dan Dvorsets, member of the Board of Finance, joined by my Board of Finance colleagues, members of Town Management, the Board of Ed, here to present the budget for fiscal year 24 and 25. So thank you for being here. You might notice, some of you might notice that a lot of the content that we're going to be talking about today is going to be similar to some of the themes that we've been talking about for the last several years. And that's by design. The Board of Finance, together with the rest of the boards in town, has been executing against a long-term plan for a number of years now, and this year's budget is a continuation of that plan. So a lot of the things that we've been discussing over the last several years are continued today. So that's actually a good thing. In terms of the agenda for this presentation, we got the call to order, the Pledge of Allegiance. We're going to go through the budget proposal, talk about the key dates, spend a bit of time talking about a lot of the thinking that went into the budget presentation, our goals, our concerns, short-term, long-term thinking. Then we'll dig into some details on the expenses, the revenues, and that all gets summarized in a mill rate. We'll open up for public comments and have discussion on any questions or thoughts, and then we'll adjourn, and we can all go home. So the critical dates for the rest of the process. The process began several months ago. We met as a Board of Finance for many hours over the month of March. The Boards of Selectmen and Boards of Education met well before that. But here we are on April 3rd, which is the town meeting and public hearing. After today, the Board of Finance does have the ability to make changes to the budget. This public hearing might inform us on certain things that we need to rethink about, or we might get additional information during the course. We do have the ability to make changes. We've been known to do that in the past. If we choose to or need to have additional public hearings on those changes, we have a couple of weeks to hold those by April 23rd. By the end of the month, on April 27th, we submit a final budget that is going to referendum to the town clerk. We have a town meeting on May 7th to set the date for the referendum, which we assume is going to be May 21st, third Tuesday of the month of May every year. And then assuming it passes, we have until June 5th to officially set the mill rate based upon that approved budget. So the goals of the Board of Finance, there are multiple priorities that go into preparing the annual budget. It's really a constant balancing act among competing needs of different departments and different groups in town, along with the long-term goals that we're going to need over an extended period of time. And of course, balancing all of that out with the tax burden that we're asking the taxpayers to pay. So it is a balancing act that we take very seriously. And we consider those short, medium, and long-term goals when making these decisions. From the short term, obviously, funding the annual needs of the town, the school, and the capital is job one. And we do that by looking at all departments. And also, there is oftentimes one non-recurring revenue or one-time revenue that we need to apply on a short-term basis. We don't want to take one-time revenue and add long-term expenses. We want to be able to match one. The medium-term goal is to make sure that we continue, as Steve mentioned earlier, to continue to increase our cash portion of our capital to minimize our borrowings and to plan those capital needs out. We're going to talk a lot about that in a bit. And then after identifying those current and near current needs, the hardest part is really fitting all of that into the long-term plan to prepare for the future. We have big needs, we have big goals as a town. So things like total debt or general fund growth, funding reserves, those are all part of a long-term plan that we need to balance. And you're going to hear a lot about that over the next couple minutes as I talk. There is no right answer to that balancing act, but what we do is we spend a lot of time looking at all the pieces of the puzzle, deliberating as a team with members of town and other boards, and making a recommendation for what we think is best. And what's presented here is the unanimous recommendation of the Board of Finance based upon that work. Other concerns, again, similar to previous years, inflation continues to impact fixed costs and the capital requirements, and they put a stress on everything. We all know that. We continue to manage past the debt bubble. Last year, this said we were managing through the debt bubble. We've gotten through the debt bubble, or we're almost through the debt bubble. Now we're looking at how to manage past the debt bubble to make sure that we're not continuing to escalate and executing the plan that we have in place. And then sufficient clarity on near-term areas of investment. That's where reserves come in, and the strategy for that one-time revenue, which we've already talked about. So let's dig into each of these goals a little bit. I promise this won't take too long, but I think understanding our thinking is as important as understanding the specific numbers. So properly funding operations, this is obvious. The primary goal is to fund the needs of the town, the school, and the capital needs on an annual basis properly. So we've met with all of most of the town leaders, most of the department heads, volunteers, employees, and we do have very talented group of people managing our town, and their presentations were all, and I say that specifically, well done, and they articulated their needs quite well. Can't meet all of them, and we deliberated on and prioritized, and that's what is presented here, what we believe is a responsible proposal based upon those needs. And then, let's see, so how do we meet this goal? We review the requests, special concentration on certain expenses that are outside of, control, not, outside of control is the actual cost of, say, fuel. You can manage, but then you have to pay attention to things like that. Health insurance is dictated to us, so we have to insert that. And then per town policy and also best practice, we have a contingency that is about half a percent of the total budget. That contingency is meant to cover for unplanned expenses for the town and the school, specifically meant to backstop unknowable fluctuations in special education. I know that's a critical piece and one that we pay attention to. The Board of Ed budgets their special ed budget on specific data at a time with very little cushion, and we made an agreement that the town is going to absorb risk on the special ed, absorb that risk and commingle it with other contingent risks across the budget, which largely tend to offset each other. So there's not pockets of risk assessment in different pieces of the budget, but all in one place, and we can manage all unknowables together as a team at the Board of Finance level. We think that is the best way to do it. We've been doing it that way for a few years, and it's been very successful. Another goal is to, beating a theme here, beating a drum, but I'll continue to say it because it's important. We've made really good progress over the past 5 to 10 years on maintaining our assets better and making investments out of cash capital and restricting bonding to truly long-term projects and maintenance projects. So really and one of the ways we do that is we've been very intentional in our process in funding reserves for these known large events, both now and going forward. That's actually the first thing that I look at when the budget book comes to the Board of Finance is, are we properly funding the reserves? We need to maintain that discipline to support our long-term plans. It's really very similar to the personal budgeting philosophy of pay yourself first. These are, you set up goal-based savings accounts for specific future uses over time. That way, when we know we have to replace a $1 million fire truck 7 years from now, we don't have a $1 million expense that we have to bond for. We've actually covered it over a course of period of time. We're doing that over a number of different categories, which is going to set us up well for the future. So that's the good news. However, as a dose of reality, this chart here that we've been showing for the last several years represents our total debt as a town total debt as a percent of the budget compared to our AAA peers in the state. So you'll see that we are pretty far to the right in terms of our debt percentage to our budget. So we need to acknowledge this reality in all of the decisions that we make. So this is not a surprise. In fact, it's fairly common immediately following any large capital project in municipalities. And that's what happened here. The boards at the time unanimously approved a school. That was passed at a referendum by a 2-1 margin. And so it was known that we were going to have a period of elevated debt, and here we are. And we've been managing to it, managing through it, and we need to continue to execute on the plans that we have to manage through this and get the debt into a more manageable long-term position. And again, we do this by increasing cash spending, maintaining reserves, bonding appropriately, all the things that I've discussed for the last several months. So the capital budget, again, we're increasing the cash budget. We went through all this a few minutes ago, so I'm going into detail. The cash portion is being used for paving, for funding reserves, and for some select specific purchases. We're using excess revenue and ARPA for other current purchases. And then the debt portion is truly for long-term projects for the town and the school. The general fund is not something that is necessarily specifically part of an annual budget. There's no line that says general fund in the annual budget, of course, but we need to spend a minute or two talking about it because it is the backdrop for a lot of the decisions that get made. It is the measurement of the financial health of the town. It's really very, very important. And we need to reinforce it to everybody listening as well as ourselves. Just continue to make sure that we understand just how important it is. So we must continue to add to that fund balance every year to keep pace with the guidance from rating agencies, to keep pace with our AAA peers in town. And we prioritize this. Finance Department recently authored a policy on supporting that general fund on an annual basis, and we support implementing that as we go through this process. Another chart. This is the fund balance as a percent of the budget. You can see that both the bars and the line are going up and to the right, and being a finance guy, up and to the right is always a good thing. That means that we've been growing or at least maintaining our general fund absolute size and percent of the budget on an annual basis. So that's the good news. The difficult thing is we're not where we need to be yet. Guidance is to have unassigned general fund at 16.6% of the budget, or 2 months of cash flow. We're not quite there. We're chasing it. Those goalposts have been moved over time, and we continue to chase it. So we cannot move backwards. We need to continue to move forwards and fund that general fund every year to keep pace. Not only is it good practice long-term, but it provides short-term benefits as well in terms of savings on not needing to do short-term borrowings and the cost of those. But also we're building a bit of a war chest and get earnings on those as well. So there is both short-term and long-term benefits to this general fund. And last slide on that, the annual surplus, which we've been lucky's not the right word. We've been prudent and have had annual surpluses for the last several years. You can use that, and you can apply those, as I've said, you can balance, it's a balancing act. You can use all of the surplus in a given year and for mill rate support and reduce that tax rate by the amount of the entire surplus. But if you continue to do that, you're going to have an unhealthy fund balance. Do the opposite and apply all of that surplus to grow the fund to levels, but then you'd have an unreasonable tax increase. So again, balancing all of those needs into a responsible short and long-term plan that should have taxpayer support is the ultimate goal of the Board of Finance. Once again, that was the good news. The challenge is that even after all of that work, you see that we are at about the 25th percentile in terms of fund balance as a percent of revenue compared to our AAA peers, which is the same as last year. We haven't lost ground. The goal is to gain ground, but certainly maintain ground. So we cannot backtrack, and we made one of the last pieces of the puzzle prior to certifying the budget recommendation was to make sure that we're at a minimum maintaining that position and maintaining our fund balance, and that's critical. All right, so enough of the previews. Let's get into the main event here and dig into the specific numbers in this year's budget. Okay, so we are recommending a budget for the year, fiscal year 24-25 of $87,405,597. That's made up of town operation budget of $22,749,144, Board of Education budget of $52,896,597, debt service of $8,779,678, and the cash capital, which was previously presented, of $2,980,178. We're going to talk a bit more about each of these portions of the budget in the next few slides, and many of the takeaways that you're going to see are going to be common themes of contractual and equivalent salaries, increases that were some specific investments that we've known about, and phasing in of school security positions that was approved at town meeting For the town budget of $22.75 million, salaries for new union and non-union employees of the 2.25%. That is most of the increase every year are these contractual or equivalent salaries, no change this year. Some of the additions that were made were in public safety. We added 3 new school security and a new officer last year. Half of that went into last year's budget. Half of it is into this year's budget. That is part of the increase here. Health and welfare, we're phasing in the first half of the social services liaison. And when I say that the presentations of all the departments were impressive, the presentation on the utility and the importance of this position was really remarkable. And both the police and the health department were very adamant that this is a really important position. Culture and recreation is getting a new crew. And again, the contingency includes amounts for the town and the school, specifically special ed, and an additional contingency for the first year paid ambulance staff, which we need to cover. Highlighting again the human services position that is critical. The value is realized. Again, several departments throughout our deliberations highlighted both the importance of this position and the value that it's already created. So it's a critical position. And we are in the process, the town personnel can talk about the efficiencies that between the town and the schools and merging the IT departments, which we're in the process of doing. That's going to create both efficiencies in operations as well as expense. The education budget, which we do not have line item control over, but certainly are in collaboration with uses of those funds. Once again, most of any increase in any budget in the town, schools as well, is status quo salary increases, contractual with all unions. There's also this year a decent amount of unfunded state mandates which have to be built into the budget, and that is not discretionary. They are mandates. You all know what that means. And then we are in year 3 of a phased investment plan that was discussed several years ago, and we are executing on that for Board of Ed needs. Then we work closely with the Board of Ed and management. Several of our board members were very, very much involved in getting into line item detail to make sure that assumptions or data that went into things like salary reviews and fuel and electricity were being handled correctly. I think we reached a really good place on those types of things. We compromised on some of the unknowables, and we're sharing the risk on some things that are just, budget risks that we'll deal with during the course of the year. And then even after all of that, we challenged the Board of Ed, and we made some additional cuts that they need to go back and figure out where it's going to come from. So this was a process that had many different conversations, and this is where we ended up. Debt service, the debt service is what it is. We are, in this current budget, we are starting the principal payments on the second half of the school bonds. We started paying principal on the first half last year, meaning this current year, and then the budget that is going to referendum has the full debt service on the full school. Want to point out again, you see all these dashed lines in terms of band interest. Band is short-term borrowings, and because of our general fund size and because of our lack of need to finance certain short-term needs, there is 0 bands being issued and 0 band interest. So again, general fund policy leads to current year debt service improvements. And the Public Works Department, okay, so there's a capital plan for Public Works, and we are working on a long-term plan to support them going forward as well. We've been doing that with a lot of departments over the course of the years, fire, police in particular, and Public Works. Also a large consumer of capital. They have a number of vehicles, a number of needs, a number of apparatus that as we schedule out, will be just as smooth as the rest of the process that we're doing. For the schools, sorry about that. The schools, we have talked at length about the need to properly maintain the school, something that was delinquent over a period of time, can't continue, and we are, there was a school conditions study that is laying out recommendations on how to maintain these schools without the need for, forklift replacement, tear it down, build it back up. So there will be annual school maintenance in the budget, and this is what we are doing this year for mechanical updates for classrooms, for exteriors of the roofs, which we talked about last presentation, design services for energy efficiency and cooling, and for interior updates in both W8, both the middle school and the high school here. On the revenue side of the ledger, this is the boring side, but just as important. We are earning a decent amount of investment income. We do have cash in the bank, and we're the beneficiaries of some good rates. Our finance director and treasurer do a really good job of optimizing the earnings on our cash balances. Other revenues are a combination of government grants and fees as well as other government revenue. Those are budgeted on 5-year historical averages, and the finance director does a great job of estimating those with very little deviation. So these revenues are in good shape. So that's how the budget is built. The mill rate is a result of all of that work. You flow all of that through the calculations. You take the estimated revenues, balance that out against the budgeted expenses. That results in a tax amount that is required to fund all of that. You apply that total tax need over a growing grand list, and this budget recommendation results in a mill rate of 27.90, which is a 3.87% increase over last year, which is in line or even less than some recent budgets that we have presented and approved in the last several years. So I guess in conclusion, to wrap up, everything you've seen here is really a continuation of long-term work that's been done by several boards of finance over the last number of years. It's not a budget in a vacuum, it's a budget that's part of the plan, and we hope we can get town support in May. And with that, we would open it up for any